Okay, let's unleash the beast, or in this case, the smart factory. Welcome to DX Leaders, a series brought to you by Swiss Jam and Deloitte. My name is Lars Födisch, storyteller by heart and managing director of Precious Communications to pay the bills. Together here with my co-host, Andreas Enderlin, founder and partner of Hugo Capital Partners. Hi, Andreas, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you so much, Lars. How are you?
Not too bad. Very excited about the topic, the smart factory. Hopefully not a contradiction in itself. Let's go into that from the perspective of digital transformation. So DX Leaders is a monthly webinar. So this is episode 3 of our second season, now in 2021. Just a month ago, we had the topic on healthcare sustainable digital future. What were some of your takeaways from the last webinar, Andreas?
Well, that's you're asking a difficult question. It's been 1 month, right? But I think health tech is a big topic, and I think the regulatory framework is a critical one. And I think we learned a lot about, client first and solutions, health tech solutions, where the client is put into the center. And obviously ethical considerations also very, very critical. So it was a very fascinating discussion.
Yeah, I think so too. So today we have the topic on the smart factory, slightly less human-centric, yes or no? Maybe that's something that we should look at. And we have fantastic guests and panelists today with us. We have Stanislav Protasov. He's the technology president and co-founder at Acronis. Hi, Stan. How are you doing?
Doing very good. Thank you for having me here.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. We have Robert Yeaker, director and co-founder at the Circular Industries Group. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Lars. So glad to be here. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have the director from A-Star, the technology agency in Singapore. We have Ho Yi Wei. How are you doing, Yi Wei?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Lars. Thanks for having me here.
Excellent. Good. Before we deep dive into the topic with our experts, 2 things. One is the reminder that this webinar is about you, the audience. So please early on start to put your questions in the Q&A section here, the Q&A section, not the chat function, so that we can make sure that we answer your questions. And of course, the DX Leader series is in connection with the Digital Transformation Awards. And I think Andreas want to share a little bit about how that works this year.
Yes, me again, Lars. So I'm very glad to present that. So if we can quickly and go into the different slides. Yes, so if we quickly, yeah, so basically this Digital Transformation Award, we started that last year, as you well know, Lars, and we had an incredible feedback from the ecosystem. So we are very glad to be here today. And I just want to briefly do, kind of a flashback to last year, what we achieved. And it was really amazing. We were in the middle of the lockdown, and we started this out of the, let's say, home office with a very diverse team. And we scaled it up, and it's been really an amazing journey. So we got in 43 applications last year. We had a very competent jury board, which was amazing. We worked together with Deloitte to define, digital transformation kind of maturity model, because, we want to have a objective assessment of all the applications. Digital transformation in itself is already very complex. So you want to have a framework to kind of assess that. So we did that. And what we really did also is we invited all different type of companies, MNC, startups, SMEs, and we were very proud to have a diverse set of different companies. And so what we also did last year was obviously the DX Leaders that was initiated also last year. And this was really about exchanging best practices as we do today. And I think this is a continuation of last year's series, and we're very happy to have this competent board here and panel to discuss this topic for today. Maybe one further, Clarissa. All right, so this year's award, and this is really a shout out to everybody who has not yet applied. So if you are out there, if you have done an amazing, project, if you think it's amazing and you want to get an objective view on that project, then please apply. It's really a great initiative to, kind of put yourself out into a jury and into the public to storytell about what you have done in digital transformation. So this year, we're very glad that we have extended on the subcategories. So we have, for instance, building an infrastructure. We have cyber also here, economies. We're very happy to have them supporting us. We have advanced manufacturing, where we have Inventa supporting us. So we're very, very happy about that. And some really amazing other sponsors. We have a returning Zulke, so very happy for that. We have 6 for financial services and so on. And what is also important is that this whole initiative has never been just a Swiss initiative. It's been very broadly anchored into the environment and the ecosystem here. So as you can see, we have really support from a number of different chambers. So we have the French, the Spanish, the German, the Eurocham. And what we also did this year as a first timer is basically extending it to ASEAN, because we all know, being in Singapore is just one piece in the puzzle. We all have a regional role and we all work regionally. And that's why it's so important to integrate that region. And I think we got some tremendous feedback also out of the different countries. One further, Clarissa. All right, so I'm not going to go into the details here, but basically there is a very structured approach. What else can you expect? We're Swiss, right? So it has to be very process driven. So we are going through closed door selection, then we will have a public selection, and it will be really interactive. So it will be a lot of fun. So if you're out there, you want to apply with your team, it's going to be really a lot of fun. So please, join us for that journey, and I can assure you, you will not regret it. One further. All right, and obviously you will ask yourself, so what are the evaluation criteria? And the evaluation criteria, without going into all the details, but it has been developed together with Deloitte. So we're touching on strategy, customer, culture, organization, operation, and technology. And you can be assured that it's going to be an objective assessment. One further, Clarissa, please. Thank you so much. All right, so what is it in for you? So first of all, you need to speed up because the deadline is actually mid of September. So please get in touch with Clarissa and Andrea that are on the team and that will be in touch with you after this webinar. So we have, what do we have? A bit less than 1 month remaining. But basically what you can get out of it, as I mentioned before, it's really the recognition of what you have been doing in digital transformation. It's really also for you a good opportunity to access new networks because you will be in touch with very broad board of jury members and you will have exposure to the region. So we are inviting, all people that are participating from the region. Last year, we even had people from Europe. And so I think it really gives you a platform to showcase what you have done. And last but not least, there is some monetary incentive in there. It should not be your main, factor to decide whether you want to participate, but there is some money in there that you can use, for team activities or anything. So with that, I want to hand back to Lars, and I want to ask him whether he has brought in some new applications for this year's award.
We're working very, very, very hard on that. But we had fantastic submissions last year, and I'm very confident that we get even higher submission rate for this year. So, and thanks to all the sponsors, also to, of course, Acronis and Inventa for supporting, especially today's episode on unleashing the power of the smart factory. Yeah. Let's look into a quick poll question for the audience to get the discussion started. So let's fire up the poll. What do you think is the biggest threat in today's smart factory? Biggest threat in today's smart factories? Is it poor access control mechanisms? That could be physical or digital. Is it the issue of data silos? Is it legacy systems or rising sophistication of cyber criminals? So how can we always stay one step ahead? You can only, it's not a multiple choice, so there's no right or wrong. We just want to get an idea on where do you think the biggest threat and challenge stands today. Andreas, if you would have to place a bet, what do you think will be the outcome?
I think it's legacy systems, certainly of the OT environment, because we are confronted with, you know, systems out of the 70s or 80s or even earlier, depending on where you are on this planet, right? So that's a bit fair.
I actually read there's a big demand for COBOL programmers because some old machinery is still running on COBOL and these kind of. Okay, yes. Let's get to technical. I'll count down to 5 and see what comes out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's close the poll and see what the results are. It's actually the sophistication of cyber criminals followed by legacy systems. So maybe that's something we can dive into with our panelists in the moment. But let's kick off the topic with an introduction to the topic by Robert from Circular Industries Group on unleashing the power of the smart factory. So Robert, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Lars, for the kind introduction. Inventa Technologies is a chemical engineering company. And over the past 30 years, Inventa has built more than 120 chemical plants globally and has seen firsthand how manufacturing has become more and more digitalized. Earlier this year, we founded a new venture called Circular Industries, a spin-off of Inventa, which focuses on sustainable substances. Currently, Inventa and Circular Industries are working on 2 decentralized, smart, and sustainable biofacturing hubs scheduled to go live in 2023 and to be located in Bad Zurzach, Switzerland and Tuas, Singapore. Maybe if we go to the next slide. Automation, digitalization, and cybersecurity are absolutely crucial when it comes to chemical plants. On the one hand, digitalization and automation help us to produce more efficiently and more consistently. On the other hand, this has created new challenges and threats. Cybercrime, for example, is the fastest growing type of crime, and it could potentially bankrupt whole businesses depending on the type and on the extent of an attack. In the chemical industry, we often deal with explosive materials, which makes it paramount that the integrity of all systems and the integrity of every substance that comes into the plant is safeguarded at all times. Manufacturing facilities also have very high plant downtime costs that can quickly run into the millions of dollars. Accordingly, system reliability is key, and these systems not just need to be protected, but also recovered quickly whenever there's a failure. Cyber criminals obviously know how critical these systems are, making them a rather popular target. And I'm sure the cybersecurity expert in this webinar, Stanislav from Economies, will elaborate further on that later on. Could you maybe go to the next slide? Inventa's plants are state-of-the-art, digitalized and automated, as well as equipped with modern cybersecurity systems. This means, for example, that all instruments are digitally connected to control units, which automatically determine the steps and actions that need to be performed. Every 10 milliseconds, thousands of data points are generated, evaluated, and appropriate actions are automatically taken within less than a second. The system continuously analyzes data in order to immediately spot any anomalies and respond with potentially required corrective measures. Backup systems are in place throughout the plant. The network traffic is inspected at all times, And thanks to machine learning functions, the software is able to optimize the process and even learn from past hiccups and security threats. All this should ensure the safety, reliability, and efficiency of plants. If we maybe now go to the last slide. I briefly also mentioned before that we sometimes deal with explosive substances in the chemical industry. And accordingly, we need to be absolutely sure about the actual content of everything that comes into our plants. This has led to initiatives focused on digitizing supply chains so that we are able to track the journey of raw materials from the source to the facility in order to ensure its integrity from a content, quality, and sustainability perspective. With that, I would like to thank SwissGem and Deloitte for the organization of this exciting webinar. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion with Stanislav from economies and Uwe from A-Star.
Excellent. Thanks, Robert. I think it was a good overview. So now let's directly dive into the conversation. Andreas will ask the first question. Before he does that, just a kind reminder, please, for the audience, put your questions that you have for our experts up in the Q&A section, so we make sure that we can address them, or you can look at those that might appear there and just upvote them. We usually always run out of time for your questions, so please put them in early. Andreas, over to you.
Sure, thank you, Lars. Yeah, so Stan, I mean, to kick off the discussion, I mean, you have more than 20 years of software development experience in virtualization and cloud computing and security. So you're representing somehow the IT world maybe today here. So if you now apply your experiences in the manufacturing area, I mean, what would you recommend to build a future-proof factory of the future? From your perspective, from what you have learned over the years?
Well, it's a great question. And basically, you know, if you look at the cyber attacks which happened this year or last year, involving big names like Acer from Taiwan or Colonial Pipe or whatever, right? It was big corporation with really good security solutions. And I can assure you that small and medium businesses usually have from 1 to 10 different security solutions. And big businesses, they typically has up to 100 security solutions in place. And I would say, what happened? Why it did not work? And from my standpoint, because the major problem is still human. All those factories, they're great, they're monitoring on all possible intruder events and things like that. But there is still humans who are opening phishing emails. And I can tell you from our experience, we were working for one of our clients, and we simulated a phishing attack. And company is mid-size, and 25% of their employees entered their credentials. So we definitely did a lot of training, explaining how to determine that this is actually malicious email and things like that, and help them to improve. But this is happening all the time. Yeah. And the only thing you can do, you can train your people, because people is the weakest part. Yeah. And if you allow me, I will make an analogy. I was reading a book about 9/11 event, and it's quite interesting. Morgan Stanley occupied 22 floors in one of the twin brothers. And they had very interesting guy in charge of security, Rick Riscola. And the guy was former military. And he was a bit crazy in a way that he actually did exercises every several weeks. And you can imagine all those investment bankers who are making a ton of money, who are dealing with millions of dollars every day, and they had to evacuate like every second week. And everybody hated the guy. But what happened is that in 9/11 event, he saved almost everybody from Morgan Stanley. And it's 2,700 people. So that's the only way you can actually improve your security. Train, do red team exercise, do phishing email exercise, test your backup system, test your security system, simulate the attack which was successful.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's very interesting. And we're touching on a recurring topic, right, in digital transformation, which is people. And one of the major things that you were saying is actually training. And so there is this inherent contradiction, right, or this conflict sometimes in a manufacturing side between OT, operation technology, right, so the factory floor, and the IT people. And there are also different people in terms of how they think about security and so on. What is your experience with these different type of people? Also, what, you know, how they're incentivized on the factory floor? Because, you know, on the factory floor, you're not allowed to have any outage. So some of your interventions on the security side might have interruption of your, or might lead to an interruption of your manufacturing process. So what is your experience on the people side?
From my standpoint, you should have security function. You should have chief information security officer, or you should have some partner who is doing that for you. And when it comes to security, there could be no compromises, which means that, yeah, halting down your operation floor for 1 hour could cost you money. But imagine what would happen if it halted down permanent. As Robert said, you are out of business, right? Yes. So it's quite simple. And this chief information security officer and his team, they should treat both IT and OT system as a single instance, because you never know where the attack will come from.
Yeah, okay. And any other issues that you say that you have been talking to your customers about, you know, in terms of cyber threats for manufacturers? If we have like people, you know, factory owners that are listening today, any special threats that they should be concerned of?
Well, basically, in most cases, one of the problems is that they lack people with necessary skills. And as such, it's sometimes for them, it's difficult to hire the right person because, okay, you're a chief information security officer. Are you good or bad? How do you answer this question? Yeah. And the only answer is actually whether this guy simulates the attacks and shows you that actually in case of successful attack, your factory is going to be back online within a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, okay. And maybe to the other participants, I don't know, Robert, do you have a perspective from your experience?
On the issues of cybersecurity, previously I worked in banking, and actually we had to do almost weekly, we had to do trainings in this regard, like really how to react, what to look for. And I completely agree with Stan that this is crucial. People are the key factor in this regard. People need to be trained, awareness needs to be increased. So yes, it's definitely people.
Okay. Maybe, Robert, a follow-up question on that now, maybe from the more industrial point of view. You're an expert on new processes, solutions, from sustainable aviation fuel to green hydrogen. So does it then normally mean, because the topic is digital transformation, those new factories, they're kind of greenfield approaches and everything is meant already with today's mindset? Or is it mainly also projects that are in a transformation process, and then you have, you know, the latest of the kind of technology here and something there that doesn't gel? So how do you, from your perspective, look into digital transformation now, really on the factory floor?
I mean, absolutely. In a lot of cases, you have an existing factory with a lot of legacy systems which are naturally more vulnerable to new technologies, new threats. And we maybe need to upgrade this factory. So this creates a lot of challenges. And we kind of address that by basically looking at the plant or the chemical plant from a holistic view, really going back to the roots and then trying to as efficiently reestablish or upgrade the plant. But at the moment, we are all focused on greenfield plants. So we have really the privilege kind of to build a plant on the greenfield. And this, of course, allows us to really only use, let's say, the most up-to-date technology, the most state-of-the-art technology that is equipped to deal with current cybersecurity threats.
But, to some extent, isn't that just postponing the problem? Because I'm sure the factories that are now 30 years old were also equipped with the latest technology, state-of-the-art inventory back then. So is there a paradigm shift when building new smart factories now to see, hey, what maybe the machine will last 30 years, but the IT component has to have a more modular setup and has to be all interconnected. And we know this might last life cycle 30 years, 20 years, 2 months.
On the one hand, at Inventa, we build plans modularly. So this actually does allow us to build plans, let's say, step by step, and also replace certain parts step by step. But I also quickly mentioned in my speech that we use machine learning functions now in our cybersecurity systems. So these algorithms they learn from past hiccups, they learn what went wrong, and then they incorporate this data to respond better or more appropriately in the future. So this should kind of help us to reduce the necessary upgrades in the future.
Yeah, but Robert, don't you think that also there is this this feeling? This is, I guess, from experience, that the more you increase connectivity, right, the more you have this open factory. Also, talking about 5G. I mean, we'll be maybe talking about 5G also. It opens up a lot of potential in terms of connectivity. But then again, this is actually opening up also cyber holes, sort of, right? So it's actually threatening cybersecurity. So
it is really chance and opportunity and threat. Yes, on the one hand, we now have capabilities, possibilities that weren't there previously, but on the other hand, yes, we have to address completely new threats today. Absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe over to you, on especially this smart factory, right? So and Andreas was alluding to it. So nowadays we'll have IoT, sensors, cloud, data analytics. Everything is interconnected. Two things, and maybe to also not make it just a cybersecurity only topic. How do we make sure that everybody involved in a project of a smart factory knows that they have to kind of speak the same language? That, the mechanical machines have to talk to your cloud server, has to talk to your HR system, has to talk to your HR concept, and it's all constantly changing, and it's not anymore, we built this piece of this screw for the next 20 years as is.
Yeah, exactly. The modularity of solutioning actually is very important right now for all the reasons that I think Robert mentioned. That's what that also open up for the user point of view, a whole plethora of solutions, right? That they now can mix and match, and we have come to a situation where it almost become a tyranny of choice. Right? When you have so many choices, you don't know what to do. It's a common Singaporean thing, right? I mean, we go out for lunch and then you go out to a hawker center and then you lament, nothing to eat today. But actually what you mean is that I don't know what to choose from. Right? And that is something that a lot of our local companies are actually facing, right? Yeah. When they come to digital transformation, how do we do it? So the way that we approach it is always planning, right? Take a longer time to plan, right? And then to do it modularly, step by step, right? So there are always low-hanging fruits for them to get at first, and then to to benefit from it, and that they'll be hooked. And then they will be asking, what's the next step and what's the next step? Actually, I want to go back to what Stan was talking about in cybersecurity, and that is actually very interesting. And he mentioned one thing that is very important. The biggest vulnerability actually is the people. Yes. Now, the problem is this, that when in so many things that we are doing right now in digital transformation, it has also been rightly identified that our workers are the ones that need to be trained. Yes. Right, to embrace this new whole era of digitalized manufacturing, and therefore they need to be trained in all the digital tools, sensors, IoT, and whatnot. And those kind of trainings has most of the time come to the fore. And what has been lagging has always been security training, right? And in no small way, actually, it's a fault of a lot of companies that are selling security solutions. Why do I say that? Right, a lot of companies go to the companies that we work with, and they want to sell solution in terms of appliances, in terms of softwares, but nobody goes and sell about training. And that has, as what Stan has pointed out, actually it falls onto the company, right? What does the CIO do? Right, and what is the kind of a security regime that they have to implement, and also the kind of a training that is needed. But that is really a part that is a solid list.
So are you also saying that, you know, for SMEs, because obviously the challenge for SMEs is a different one than for a big MNC that has, you know, the structure and the people and the security approach. Are you saying that it's also about, you know, working on the small things, like, like password, update your password just regularly, right? I mean,
absolutely. There are a few areas here. One is, of course, like what you say, don't put your password on a post-it and stick it on the computer screen, right? I mean, but I see that happening all the time, you know, when I visit some of these companies. And you mentioned they may not have, they only have a security folks, 1 to 10 of them. And actually, I can tell you the truth, a lot of them don't even have one, right? Or have maybe 0.2 or 0.5, because he's actually doing a lot of other things other than this. And security is just one of them. And cybersecurity in most people's mind are all about IT.
Yes.
And OT cybersecurity is something that is, they think that because it's within the network of the company, therefore it's safe.
Yes.
Right? Sometimes that cannot be further from the truth, like what you mentioned as well. In some of the older appliances, there is just no security feature that's embedded in them, as the kind that Robert was talking about. Right, a lot of them maybe is obfuscated, right? So it's not so easy to get to, right? But it's not security.
So maybe then cybersecurity, one part of it, but generally when you especially work with more traditional manufacturers in the region, and then when they come to a point where they need to modernize, they need to upgrade, they're going into a digital transformation process. What are some of the shortcomings and especially solutions that you have that they can approach it without getting overwhelmed, without getting lost, but really focusing, hey, this needs to be done, and it's not just technology. So to take that directly off the table to address that, of course.
Yeah, the thing that you're talking about here is the mindset, right? The frame of reference that they come into this project. To be fair, I mean, a lot of the companies that we work with, or almost all companies that we work with now, they have this question in their mind. And the question is not about whether we should digitalize or not. They know that they need to, right? The question they often ask is, how do we do it, right? And the how do we do it is actually something that a lot of them, or some of them that I've worked with, they were telling me, well, I bought this solution 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and it's now sitting as a white elephant. Right? And these are always the cases where there is not enough thorough planning, right, and a good road mapping that they can then follow on in the digital transformation. And I would say digital transformation is a journey. And for any journey, you need a map. You need a good roadmap, right? That can help you to really transform. Some of the companies that we have worked with has already gone through this, sensorizing their devices, digitalizing their manufacturing data. Now they've got a nice overview, dashboarding done, able to do manufacturing scheduling, and some even in terms of preventive maintenance. And all these are on brownfield equipment. So pretty good. And then they will start to ask more advanced questions like, it's been generating tons of data for me every day. What do I do with the data? Right. So now that's the good point where we start about talking about machine learning, AI, right? Then what are those things that that we need to do that will be solved by this kind of technologies, right? Whether it be procurement, quality control, and these are the areas where AI machine learning will be great. I mean, so it's a step-by-step approach.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and maybe I would like to ask Stan, you know, on because there is this trend of obviously using AI on cybersecurity and on all the data that is collected, right, in cybersecurity. So, Stan, is that something that you encounter that you actually work with your clients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pretty much every security vendor does that right now. Yeah. I mean, we have more than 1 billion events processed by our own neural network, learning what processes can be malicious, what not. And any other security vendor is doing that. But you see, the interesting fact is that, yes, you will be way better determine potential attack, but you could not eliminate a successful attack by machine learning. I mean, there still will be new threats, new vector of attack, which will get in. And this is what you have to prepare. I actually listened with interest what Evie was saying, because one of the things which is interesting is that, yeah, digital transformation right now, everybody understands. And indeed, people may not understand why they need it, how do they do that. But interesting fact is that 60% of SME owners still believe that they are not going to be target of cyber attack. Yes. Because I'm small, I'm not interested. Why do they attack me? They attack you because they can. They attack you because cyber criminals is an industry. Those guys who find vulnerabilities, those guys who build botnet network, doing the penetration, and those guys who are running the payload of CryptoLocker, those three different groups of people, and they work like an industry, and you will be attacked and you will be penetrated. Yeah. So that's the reality we live in.
Yeah, but you're touching on an interesting topic that we were discussing in the briefing, right? So the cost of actually attacking has been going down over the years, right?
Oh yeah.
You can hack an account, a corporate email account for $200 US. You can go to the darknet and ask somebody to do this for you, and you get all the data, right? I think the denial of service attack, you can, so if you have a botnet, you can do it for $700. So it's like, it's so accessible. I mean, what does that mean for an SME? You know, do I have to be concerned, or is this, you know, how do I deal with that, or am I just going to shut my ears?
Well, basically, SME should focus on their main business and protect themselves using either some third-party companies or for getting somebody on the staff. And don't pay too much attention to it, because you could do not much in that regard. I mean, in Singapore, for example, if I remember correct, CSA reported they shut down about 1,000 phishing websites or malicious websites last year. But do you know how many such websites in the world? Around 250,000. So yeah, CSA does a good job in Singapore, right? But there is much more. And what you can do, again, you should train your people, and you should ensure that in case of the attack, you can restore your data, which means that you need to have a copy of your data, better than 2 copies, better than one. One maybe on premise, one in somebody's trusted partner cloud. You should actually go through the disaster recovery procedures. You should have plan how you do that, and focus on your main area, because unfortunately bulletproof protection is not possible, right?
Stan, and even Robert, I think I actually have a question, right, on this about SME, you know, thinking that they don't need to be protected because who's going to hack them, kind of thing, right? Kind of a mindset. It is actually around supply chain, right? With a more integrated supply chain, and I 4.0, and we talk about digital transformation. Definitely, supply chain digitalization and a more integrated supply chain is definitely one of those areas that we are looking at as well. And with that, the SME seems to become the weakest link, right? The unprotected ones, right? This is where I'm not sure. I mean, is there have there been observations or cases where bots are introduced, right, through such avenue, right? So the attacker may not be actually targeting the SME itself, right? It's actually targeting the companies that they're supplying to, yes, right? The bigger plants, right? That is of a higher price. I'm not sure whether that is something that you've seen before, right? Attackers that are, you know, then you see attacks originating from your own suppliers, the people that you release the suspect. So in that, would there be then an industry standard? I mean, some of them, for some of the SMEs, they are very used to, you know, saying if I have to supply to a certain company, I need to be ISO certified, I need to have certification. But now, would it also I need to be certified in cybersecurity as well?
I think it's a very good question, and you are replacing, I think, Lars in asking a very good question. So we don't need Lars next time anymore. You can come on, Yui. Very good question. So maybe to our panelists.
I'm gone.
It's actually, yeah, it's a perfect question. I mean, we all heard about SolarWinds and Cassia, and that maybe they're not exactly SMEs, but the effect which those attacks had was enormous. And I'm not sure whether it's possible, like in physical world, like if you supply some chemicals, can you affect those chemicals when they come to next for point in the chain, right? But for software, it's really a big issue. And everybody is concerned right now. And frankly speaking, the industry is still learning how to protect itself from that kind of attacks. Because, you know, typically it was like, I receive an update, I check the key, okay, it's vendor, it's SolarWinds, everything is fine, right? But SolarWinds was penetrated, and basically they got a payload inside their own binaries, which they signed with their key. And yes, it's kind of one of the biggest threat and one of the most interesting attack vectors which appeared in the last couple of years.
Thanks, Dan. Let's do a quick round of rapid fire answers, and then we go to the questions from the audience. So that, because we promised questions from the audience, so we have to make sure we have some time for that. So rapid fire basically can give maximum a 1-sentence answer, and I just want to go around the room. Name the most critical skill employees need to possess to succeed in the factory of the future. What's that one most critical skill employees need to possess in the factory of the future? And of course, give me a why, but ideally in one question. Robert, you're up on the spot.
I think it's the ability and willingness to continuously learn, because factories standards are always changing and employees need to adapt accordingly.
Okay, Yui.
Yeah, I would take the same answer. I mean, exactly that. So I was in the same seminar with my Minister for Education yesterday, and that's exactly the thing that we are talking about.
So that specialist foreman that knows how to do this piece of metal scrubbing wouldn't survive that long in a factory of the future anymore. Okay.
Well, actually, it's not that he is not going to survive. I mean, the demand for that kind of specialists will always be here, but you would need less and less such specialists. It's quite narrow specialization. And for majority
to be really,
of
really good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then let's go to the questions from the audience. And I think the first one is from Alex Wild. What are the 3 things that work for cyber safety training leading to permanent change of their behavior? 3 things that lead to permanent change through training in cyber safety. I think, Stan, that's kind of earmarked for you, but
yeah.
add to that.
Well, basically, what changes the behavior when the people see that they have been fooled, and they see that actually they were the victim of the attack. And in your training, you should focus on that, not only explaining that it could be dangerous to open an attachment. You just simulate an attack, let the person to open the attachment and see his laptop log. And that's actually changes the mindset almost immediately.
Yeah. Lars, I think we have a very interesting question for Huey on the regulation. You want to take it?
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, so the question is really, not disappeared. No, it's back here. Okay, so do we need stricter cybersecurity regulations from the government in Singapore and globally? You know, is this a governmental kind of role to put the boundaries? Because we're also living in a very connected world, right? So what's your take on that?
I actually think that is inevitable. We will come to that. In fact, the CSA is already studying that in our, even just in Singapore alone, I think there are identified key infrastructure, critical infrastructures that will need to be, that will actually run through all those drills that are designed by CSA regularly, right? And some of them are actually run by corporations, and they will need to comply with the guidelines that that are laid out by CSA. And I think that it is already coming. I think with the kind of attacks that we have seen, the kind of attacks that we have seen, both in terms of intercepted and also both that we have actually suffered under, it becomes a no-brainer.
Is it going to be, sorry, very interesting discussion and answer. So is it going to be as strong as in China, what we have seen with Didi? Because in the end, it's about data, it's protecting data, right? Relevant, critical data. Do you think that this step, this very strong governmental kind of protection barrier,
probably not to the extent that the China has taken it. I think they have taken it to much further than us. So in Singapore, I mean, in terms of data protection, there is there are laws there that govern it, and therefore it is in some way already regulated in that way. But it still depends on the individual companies that to implement systems to protect those personal data that they collected. Then it coming back to what China is doing. I mean, the amount of data that they are talking about is way larger than what we are than what we have here. I mean, interestingly, in those discussions that I have with Chinese companies, the data sets they have are actually quite fantastic. Then that goes to the other point as well. Singapore being a hub function, right, in our global economy, we can't keep ourselves closed. That's not the way to do business. That's not the way that Singapore can function. So we must always balance it with openness in our economy and in our industry, right? So that it still continue to be business friendly. And business friendly also means a business safe as well. So that's a tight balance that we have to draw.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then maybe one question, and that goes pretty much into Robert's territory. The question is, I would like to know what's the market potential for circular economy, and what's the ROI on that compared to normal manufacturing?
I think, or we think, the market potentially is huge simply because of shifting regulations. For example, in Europe, we actually see that companies are incentivized to use sustainable processes to reuse what was already generated instead of just creating more and more. We also think there will be a time where, let's say, governments will actually impose taxes and duties on companies that generate waste, that don't reuse their waste. And there is a lot of waste out there, which is basically free resources. So in terms of ROI, you can think of it like this. You take a cheap resource, waste material, you turn it into something high valuable. And all in between, that's your margin. And I assure you the margin is definitely better or equivalent than what you would be getting if you generate new resources and turn it into the same materials. So I think the ROI is absolutely there.
But wouldn't that also need that we'll actually look at real prices at every stage? Because sometimes because of cheap labor, subsidies from the government, new resources might be cheaper than actually recycling them. And costs in between countries and continents and industries are sometimes looked into. It's not fair prices. CO2 emission, for example, should it be factored in or not? So can we have that without a fair price mechanism?
Maybe you could rephrase the question.
I mean, fair point. So I get your point that you said actually reusing should be cheaper and get us bigger margin than starting with a new product. However, what we've seen, or what I've seen and read about, is a lot of times it's an issue of materials are not necessarily fairly priced, because it's only a singular view on what does it cost to get it out of the ground, not to filter the water, to replant trees, to deal with the aftermath of
no end-to-end. No end-to-end, right? Yes.
That is absolutely correct. Today, we don't apply this holistic view. We just look at it. Yeah. Okay, this is what it costs, labor production cost, that's it. It doesn't matter how much CO2 you emit, how much carbon monoxide is out there, methane, whatever. It's just very singular view. So that is definitely going to change in the future. We have to change if we want to, let's say, achieve our climate goals, if you want to keep the planet as is, to say.
Okay, then maybe directly a follow-up question that just popped in, and then we have, I think, time for a last one. Why would you choose, and I can also maybe then ask Yui on that one, why choose Singapore as a location for a smart factory? Is it tax climate just in favor, and or the logistical kind of position, or is it the skills that you have here, or it really depends on what you want to do?
The weather, Lars, you have forgotten the weather if I look outside.
It's raining.
Do I go first?
Oh, yeah.
Robert, go first.
Okay. Robert or Yui?
Yeah, sure. We actually chose Singapore for various reasons. On the one hand, it's logistics. It is also taxes, to be honest, but taxes is just one factor. Singapore is logistically very well located within Southeast Asia. There's smart people in Singapore. There is available factory locations. And Singapore is simply the perfect manufacturing hub for us. For example, we have a direct access to port. From there, we can serve China, we can serve the surrounding countries, and we see a lot of customer demand in this area.
Yui.
Right. So, yeah. So, why Singapore? Right. As I think Robert pointed out, Singapore is a hub, right? And that's the role that we've been playing since 1819 when Stanford Raffles came to Singapore. Right? He was attracted here because it was a hub, right? And that is the role that we continue to play. But beyond that, I think moving into the future, we are talking about digitalization here, and training of our workers is something that is very big now, right? And we are now talking about not just about how many graduates are graduating with relevant skills and things like that. We're talking about lifelong learning, right? We are now changing terminologies so that we can shift our minds in thinking of it's no longer Institute of Higher Learning, but it's actually Institute of Continuous Learning, right? So that kind of workers training, so that to keep our skills up to date to what is needed, is also another thing that is very important. Other things are protection of capital, investment that's here, protection of intellectual properties that are in Singapore are also very important for us as well. And to make this place a business-friendly, business-safe environment for investment.
Thank you. Andreas has one last quick question for Dan, right?
We don't want to miss out on this one because it's also a good question. So I'm curious to know if Acronis also observed that some cyber attacks are initiated between competitors.
Not really, not that much. I mean, typically it's some kind of groups called APT, and essentially sometimes they can be I would say state sponsored, right? And can be attributed to different states like China, Russia, United States, Indonesia, whatever. But we don't see that much between the competitors. I do expect that start happening, but frankly speaking, I do not foresee it to be on a high scale, for the very simple reason. Typically, the guys who are in this business, in cybersecurity, they understand that this is kind of two-sided blades, and you can cut yourself as well. And those who are not, they're fortunately enough have not a lot of ways to attack their competitors. Let me put it this way.
Okay.
So then it's kind of more global competition than the corporate ones that the question was.
Yes, yes.
Cool. Let me summarize up with a few sound bites that our team behind the screens helped to compile. So we had a few interesting bonmots from Stan. And I think that was reflected by most of you, was one of the major problems of security is it boiling down to still being human, right? The humans are normally the most attackable surface, not necessarily the technology. You also said you have to train, do team exercises, test your security systems, and simulate quite often, because you better be prepared, as you never know when and where an attack might come from. And you cited a statistic that in a phishing exercise, 25% of employees actually entered their credentials. You said it might be one of the ideas for training is let them step into the trap to give them the aha moment, right? Good.
Exactly.
Robert was saying that sometimes dealing with, you sometimes actually deal with literal explosives, not just, hypothetical, but real explosive in chemical industry. So we need to be absolutely sure of quality control, because then the output, the manufacturing, the process is extremely critical. And this has led to the digitalization initiatives with the whole journey trapping from raw materials source to facility, on QC, QA, sustainability that really is a massive accelerator for digital transformation. We shared that there are so many things happening right now on the digital transformation front. And what you noticed is that we always be lagging is security training. And one thing that I want to highlight what you said is a lot of companies, manufacturers that want to go into a digital transformation journey, they have something that you quoted, you said, it's a tyranny of choice. There's so many products and solutions out there, you don't even know where to choose from. So make sure that you have good partners to rely on. And we had fantastic partners and experts here. Thank you very much, Stan, Robert, Yui, fantastic webinar on the smart factory. Thanks to our brilliant sponsors that made this episode possible, Inventor and Acronis. And of course, also to everybody who's tuned in. Please join us back on 14th of September when the topic will be supply chain and logistics innovation and how digital transformation tackles this industry. So thank you very much. Andreas, any last words of wisdom?
Well, on behalf of the Swiss Jam also, thank you very much for taking your time. We really appreciate, and don't forget to apply for the award because that's going to be even more fun.
Thank you, everybody. See you on 14th of September.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye.